What? I'm sorry. We're ready to go. As chair, I call this regular meeting of the Louis Riel School Division Board of Trustees to order. First thing is our land acknowledgement. As our custom, we turn it over to an individual trustee each time, and today we're Vice Chair Carrier Giblin.
Okay, LRSD land acknowledgement. The Louis Riel School Division, LRSD, brings together a community of schools on the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Inninawak, and Dakota. Our division is located on the national homeland of the Red River Métis. We recognize that Manitoba is also the traditional land of the Anishinaabe and Dene. We respect the treaties made on this land and acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past, and we dedicate ourselves to authentic alliances with Indigenous communities in a spirit of reconciliation. We recognize and honor Shoal Lake 40 First Nation, the source of Winnipeg's life-sustaining drinking water, as well as the treaty territories that generate and provide the electricity that powers daily activity throughout the province and beyond.
Thank you. We have welcome and announcements. I'll first acknowledge that Trustee Turner has sent her regrets for today. We'd like to welcome everyone participating in this hybrid meeting. Board meetings follow a formal structure, but the work of the board is conducted in a public setting that gathers parents, students, staff, and other community members. As chair, it is my duty to preserve order and decorum at all times. All in-person and verified virtual attendees are reminded to observe the procedural bylaws to engage in a respectful and orderly manner. We'd like to remind everyone there's a 15-minute public question period at the end of the meeting where verified virtual participants and verified in-person participants can bring forward questions for clarification regarding items of today's agenda. If your questions are not related to tonight's agenda, please reach out to the division by emailing info@lrsd.net. Finally, please be aware that we audio record board meetings for accuracy, that the link to the live stream of the meeting will be made available on the division's website. Unless approved, photographs, personal recordings, audio, visual, or otherwise are not. We have our affirmation of our vision and mission. Our vision is for all members of our community to excel as caring, confident, capable, and resilient lifelong learners, contribute to a democratic and sustainable world. Our mission is to provide a safe, inclusive, and engaging environment where personal and collective learning are valued and each of us reaches our full potential. Next, we move to the approval of the agenda and minutes. The approval for the agenda of the regular board meeting of October 1st, 2024. I call that the October 1st agenda for the regular board meeting be approved. I need a mover and a seconder. Steve Walker, Steve Nemeth. All those in favor, assuming there's no questions, all those in favor? Let's vote. Closed. Carried. Thank you. Now we move then to the approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting from September 17, 2024. No edits were asked for, no changes are required. September 17th minutes will be accepted as distributed. And we move into LRSD news. First, we have news from the Board of Trustees provided by Trustee Nemeth.
Thanks very much. Good evening, everyone. Just three things I wanted to draw folks' attention to. A little later in the agenda is going to be more of a focused observation conversation around Orange Shirt Day and LRSD, but I have to tell you that living close to a school where I quite often can set my watch by students arriving, recess, going home for lunch, afternoon recess, going home in the afternoon. It's a chance to peek outside sometimes, and on Friday it was to a sea of orange at George McDowell, and I really paused and thought how it wasn't that long ago where not only did we not have an Orange Shirt Day, conversations around truth and harms of the past and the present and the conversation about reconciliation was just not in anybody's, not part of our mindset and not part of our conversations at all. And such great strides and steps we've taken, even though there's lots of work still to be done. So I know that every school in Louis-Riel School Division paused and made a concerted effort to have conversations that are about truth and reconciliation in varying ways, depending on what the school community wanted and what the students felt, or what the age level of the students was. And I'm just very, very grateful for that investment in conversation, and also to the board and the senior team for the work that goes into it and how they're reminded of that work all the time. That's a good segue into work that goes on in our schools by those who volunteer their time and their talents and their energies, all the way from organizing fundraising events to community events to events of recognition, coaching and all those other things. We'd be hard pressed to replicate some of the activities and things that are offered without the input of volunteers in the community. So my hat's off to them. And finally, it's always good to recognize when our colleagues are taking on additional work and sharing their time and their talents. So to that end, Trustee Guerrier was reappointed recently to the MSBA Student Services Inclusive Education Committee. And I know MSBA is grateful for that expertise, and we should be very pleased as a board that we have a colleague who is able to provide that expertise with LRSD behind the names. That's my news.
Very much, Trustee Nemeth. Is there comments on those highlights? If not, we'll go to senior leadership team and Assistant Superintendent Cadez.
Thank you, Trustee Sigurdsson. To follow up on what Trustee Nemeth was talking about in terms of the truth and reconciliation and leading up to yesterday, I'd like to share some stories from our community about some of the work that's going on in regards to truth and reconciliation in some of our schools. At Nackville Place School, to recognize truth and reconciliation, the staff and students engaged in daily teachings, honor songs, and drumming through the K system over the last week. K-4 students read a book called With Our Orange Hearts, while grade 5 and 8 students learned about the witness blanket during library sessions. Teachers extended these lessons in classrooms, focusing on the message, "We walk in harmony," and to recognize that particular statement, all the students created paper moccasins, which were displayed as a whole school art installation encircling the school. So what you're seeing on the windows here are each individual moccasin that students represented, and it circles the entire building. These symbolize the children who never returned from residential schools, as well as those still carrying trauma or generational trauma today. So some very good discussions going on at Nackville Place School. At École Saint-Germain, this year, the students and staff are exploring the theme, Partageons nos histoires, or let's share our stories. This theme connects activities and learning to school goals that are connected to the Division multi-year strategic plan. And to launch this theme, the school has invited Indigenous community leader and author Michael Redhead Champagne, who presented his book, We Need Everyone. His message emphasizes sharing our unique gifts and recognizing that everyone has something valuable to offer, which is setting a tone for the school to follow this year. Their journey began with their first assembly today, where the school community came together to celebrate the power of their stories. And this photo is of their September bulletin board, which displays every student and staff member's name on a book. This symbolizes their readiness to share their personal stories throughout the year. We all have a story to share. It's very important that we share them and that we also hear them at the same time. So they're on a journey together. And finally, from the Island Lakes Community School, they had a school-wide Orange Shirt Day last week. And during the week, they was filled with activities honoring the history, cultures, and languages of First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people. Grade level teams acknowledge the lasting impact of the residential school system on the survivors, their families, and communities through a week of learning and reflection. And some of the highlights include our kindergarten students in the photo here who used the medicine wheel painted on the playground to smudge and to learn about the meaning and importance of the medicine wheel. The grade 1-2 students engaged in literature, discussions, and videos focusing on the classroom treaty and its connection and their connection to reconciliation. And grade 3-4 students reflected on their learning through various types of writing. Grade 5, 6 students participated in a community walk wearing orange shirts on Friday, and grade 7 and 8 students created an art installation on the fence facing Island Shore Boulevard. So those are just some of the highlights from the Bruns and CJS families schools.
Great, thank you. Wonderful highlights, a lot of great things going on in our school. Questions or comments on that? We'll move right ahead to we're lucky to have a presentation to the board today, so turn it over to Superintendent Cormack to introduce us.
Perfect. Thank you so much for some time tonight. It's my pleasure to introduce Jeremy Bender. Jeremy is our team lead for the Universal Nutrition Program. Chef Bender, we were lucky enough to steal Chef Bender from the Louisville Arts and Tech Center. He's been instructing there. And so our goals for tonight are to just give you an overview of what's happening with programming, as well as some of the funding model that we're using, talk about where we are in terms of the implementation and some of the benefits that we will see and are already seeing. So I just need you to get to that slide deck. Sorry, Nikki, thank you. And if you want to go to slide 3. So as you will have heard, we received a large bit of funding from the provincial government. So $1,535,000. We have been able to use that allocation with some direction. 65% of the funds received are meant to be used on food costs and 35% on equipment or human capital costs. And so you see the breakdown in front of you of how we are currently dividing up that across our 40 schools. In addition to the funding received by the province, we have leveraged approximately $300,000 from budgets within our control. Schools have applied for and received grants totaling over $450,000. And then we had a small reallocation of an at-risk student grant that we've also applied. And so when we started to look at the funding, we wanted to really think about this, each community that was needing support. The province directed us to spend $120,000 at specific schools. And so they identified 4 tier 1 schools based on the SES in those communities. And so those schools are required to provide breakfast, snack, and lunch option. So those are Frontenac, Lavallee, St. George, and Victor Major. We were able to determine the allocation that would go to the rest of schools. And so in front of you, what you see are the ways that we have divided up those funds based on our local knowledge of the community.
So as we started to roll out the program initially with the Renee Delarme Center commissary kitchen, the goal was to deliver food to the tier 1 schools. In September, what we noticed was there's a higher need. So currently we're servicing 12 of the 40 schools through the commissary, providing right now 800 sandwiches, 1,200 muffins, and 300 portions of vegetables a week. And we're starting to scale up more and probably going to be adding additional schools as we go. Another thing is throughout the summer, our planning team had a number of meetings. So for the remainder of the schools, we also set up a centralized purchasing and food delivery system, which was implemented at the beginning of the school year. So all schools are ordering food and having it delivered twice a week to meet the needs of our students. So a couple of things when designing the menu, we considered the following: sustainability. In a number of the schools, we have milk machines to reduce packaging and food waste, reduction of single-use packaging, and manage milk consumption better by minimizing spoilage. We also considered inclusivity, dietary and allergens, allergen-free options, adhering to strict food safety standards. And then we also considered when selecting a lot of the food items, nuts, dairy, gluten-free, and make sure that they're clearly labeled. Another thing, nutritional quality. We ensure that all meals are regardless of dietary adjustments, maintain high nutritional standards. And then culturally relevant menus. So one thing is we acknowledge the diverse cultural backgrounds of our students and aim to create a menu that reflects this diversity. So at the moment, vegetarian, vegan, halal, kosher, and indigenous meals as well. They're all being considered.
I'm gonna interject here because some of you may be saying, what is a milk machine? What does that look like in a school? So maybe do you want to describe what a milk machine is?
So with the milk machine, some of the schools, where the students, some of the school sites, the students are, you know, there's about 150 students that are accessing breakfast or snack or lunch. So these, the machine, basically what it is it's just, you know, you can go up to it and you can dispense as much or as little milk as you wish. So the whole idea with that is just to reduce the amount of milk that ends up sometimes in the trash. And sometimes if you put like a carton of milk or a carton that still has milk in it into recycling, it contaminates the whole thing. And then that ends up in the landfill rather than recycling. So what we're trying to do is mitigate that, because not every child may want 237 mLs of milk. They may only want a little bit. So we're able to dispense accordingly.
I'm relieved it's not a cow, Jeremy.
At the heart of everything that Jeremy and developed for this is really the idea of developing food literacy for. And so thinking about students' choice, their ability to have good relationship with food and access to food, so to be able to have the ability to say, I want this much, I want that much, to have selection. All of those pieces are built into the menu development and are really thoughtfully done to ensure sort of that long-term good relationship with food security.
And then with the student involvement, student feedback, we are listening to what the students are saying, and that's helping us tailor the menu to better serve their needs. Slide, please. So equipment considerations. So we are collaborating with vendors, distributors to upgrade several school sites with commercial grade appliances, including dishwashers, refrigerators, freezers. And we are enhancing the equipment that we're using to serve the food. Alongside these upgrades, we're implementing comprehensive cleaning sanitation protocols that meet Manitoba Public Health guidelines to ensure safe and efficient food service. Next slide, please. So part of our sustainable sourcing is a circular economy, so locally sourced ingredients. We're committed to supporting local farmers and producers. For example, we're collaborating with a local Manitoba company to create a granola bar using Manitoba ingredients, packaged, compostable material. We're aiming to have this rolled out by mid-November. I spoke to the owner today. Additionally, we're also beginning to use Manitoba farm-raised farmed eggs from a Swiss free-run aviary system. So that prioritizes animal welfare and supports sustainable farming practices. These eggs also have omega-3, which are critical towards brain development. In schools without food establishment permits, we're using compostable plates, bowls, and cutlery to minimize. We're also minimizing packaging by opting for bulk items like granola bars in packs of 50 or 100 instead of packs of 12 to reduce the amount of stuff that ends up in recycling or the landfill. Next slide, please. As Darcy had mentioned, we do continue to promote food literacy in our schools. We're fostering informed food choices while encouraging skills like meal planning, cooking, and budgeting. We're also supporting sustainable practices. Again, it's about food literacy and then teaching our students about reducing food waste and the benefits of choosing locally sourced seasonal food. Slide, please. So of all the schools in the division, they all have something different. There's some similarities. There's some that have centralized areas where students can access food in the hall at the time of the day. Some are doing meal service in the classroom where they have access to things like granola bars, fresh fruit, packaged fruit. And then we also have some of our schools that are also having, as mentioned earlier, access to hot breakfast, as well as snack and lunch items. So considerations for the menu, when we were planning for the menu, we looked at factors like product availability, seasonal food, variety, on-site storage, and bulk purchasing. Currently, some of our schools, after the first month, we're noticing the quantities of, the bulk quantities, it might be too much for some of our schools. So we're collaborating with our suppliers to break cases for schools with lower demand for large quantities.
So as we talk about the implementation of our plan, I can't say that we're in any one spot because with 40 schools, we're a little bit all over the place right now. So the three that I would highlight for you are in this stage of enhancing infrastructure. So looking at which schools have establishment permits, which ones don't, which ones can just need a small upgrade, which ones will have to really plan for and find something that works in the meantime. For some schools, they had a very established grab and go program. So that grab and go just means they have identified a accessible snack area or a system. And so that is in place for students to access food. In other schools, we're really expanding what they've been doing. And so for a few of our schools where we know that the need was there, but the resources weren't, we've been able to put those in place. And so we're helping them really establish a food service program. And so really, we continue to learn, I would say. We have been having regular meetings with our administrators and staff who are running the programs. We've been having weekly meetings with our suppliers to ensure that as we experience different things, we find ways to improve upon and continue to do better to serve our students. I think that is it, and we're open to some questions.
Very, very impressive. Have any questions or comments for our folks in Nordheim?
It is pretty impressive. At Lavely, and I think Darcy had a hand in this at one point, and I think this is down the road. Part of the establishing kind of norms around eating together and sharing food and using that as a communication and kind of community building opportunity. Have different schools talked about doing that kind of work? Having older kids sit and eat with younger kids, et cetera.
Yeah, I think particularly in some of our schools that have moved to different like staggered lunch hours, looking at what that looks like as a teaching time or break times as teaching times where we see educational assistance support and what those social that could be taught at the time are. I think more schools are doing it certainly than 6 or 7 years ago. I think that in some of our communities, we're seeing where mom brings the child to school and stays and has breakfast with the child in the space that's been created. So really positive modeling around how we share food together. So lots of side benefits that at first glance you might not notice, but when you spend a bit of time in programs, you really see some of the skills that you see are being enhanced without them being the primary focus.
My second part to it, how many staff so you're working out of the Lavely commissary?
Correct.
How many staff are kind of?
So we have 3 in there right now, with a goal to expand, as well as we have a delivery van as well, where we'll be able to go to a number of the schools to deliver food.
One piece that we have, if I could just add, one piece that we're just in the process of implementing it, so we didn't include tonight, was the addition of high school students in the kitchen doing coursework for credit. And so we've developed with Chef Michael Aaron, who's the chef at the kitchen, competency-based culinary arts credit for students. And so that's just in progress that we'll be able to share more with you at a little bit later date.
Samuel?
Yeah, again, obviously lots of work going into this and it's impressive to actually see this program come to life. I guess a couple comments for me, when I saw there was different tiers there, are those tiers based on implementation? Or are those tiers based on the type of menu that tier would have access to? I just didn't understand the tiering.
The tier is based on what our local knowledge tell us the need is for food in those communities, in those schools and within that community. And so that's based on school principals and staff previous knowledge that they've shared with us and shared with the province around how many kids they're serving food or needing food. And so it matches the funding model that we've created. But it doesn't stop schools from still applying for grants and other things to enhance the amount of money access. It's more related to the needs that have been assessed in that community.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And the other question I think was maybe partly answered as, I thought I heard like 300 muffins and so I'm just thinking, you know, as you continue to expand the program, is there a need for either more staff or working longer, having multiple shifts or however that's going to work? Because I think now you're probably what 40% of what the goal is in terms of what you have implemented already. I guess that's.
Yeah, so as we're expanding, we're also, we're involving the community as well. Inviting community in as well to share their knowledge and help design some of the dishes that we will be introducing to some of the schools. But yeah, right now we're servicing 12 schools and it's growing daily. We took on another school again today. We're not gonna say no, but eventually we will hit you know, a point where we're gonna have to bring on more staff.
And appreciate the cultural sensitivity part of it and know how you highlighted, having, you know, halal food is something that's culturally sensitive as well. I think, you know, our division is very, very diverse. So having that response and you guys putting that as a priority as well. For sure. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much for the work you're doing. I teach in a tier 1 school at the Transcona School Division. It's been really great to see the kids accessing all the fresh fruits and vegetables. I'm just curious, have the tier 1 schools hired staff to deliver the programming within the schools?
So the 4 tier 1 schools that we have additional staff already. So the schools that we have identified, 3 of them are community schools. And so with that have a community connector. They also are all schools that have liaison workers, which is a position funded through the division. And so they are largely responsible for that. We're really working hard to streamline it so that food service is not the sole responsibility of any one individual or even, you know, for a school that only has a CLW. And that's why we've gone to a centralized system for ordering and delivery so that people are not spending hours and hours shopping, but they can focus on programming in schools.
Here.
I'm really excited to see the program rolled out, and I think it's more than just food. It's food at the heart of it, but it, you know, it spills out into so much of the life. When I was a teacher, I know at Frontenac School on hot dog day, we would, you know, freeze extra things for kids who didn't have food later on in the week. Or when I was at Windsor Park, we would do that, and it was done in kind of a haphazard manner. To see it planned and rolled out and all the thought that's gone into it, and to hire a professional chef like you, like, I just think it's an amazing way that our division is doing stuff for our school. So thank you both so much for what you're doing.
I just want to ask if, is there a coordination with, I know we do a lot of fine work with the family centers and community kitchens. I toured the one at St. George and there's a few others. Are you coordinating with them at all, or is this strictly feeding the students for breakfasts? And
Do you mean in terms of feeding community? Is that what you're?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say that in some of our places, it's happening just in the way that they provide access. But certainly it's something that's on the horizon for the kitchen at RDC to invite community in and to engage in that. Food service is happening out of that kitchen at St. George. that community kitchen that you mentioned at St. George, that's where it's centered out of.
Yep.
Family centers, we're just beginning to sort of explore what food service has looked like in that space and how it can be rolled into what we're currently doing for school-aged children.
Excellent. Yeah, again, just want to, on behalf of us all, thank you for not only for coming to talk to us tonight, but for all the work that you're doing. It's a fantastic program, and we're all very proud of it. I know personally, my dad was a principal in New York City, and in the sixties, he started a program in his own school and actually got in trouble with his superintendent for doing it. But it wasn't an official program, but he started that. He was ahead of his time. So it's always been something close to my heart that this is something that really needs to be done, and I'm very proud that you're working so hard at it on our behalf, on the behalf of our community. So thank you again for doing it and for coming to talk to us. Thanks, everybody. Excellent. I'm hungry. I want a muffin. So from food we move on to money. So we go then to finance and audit matters, and we turn this over to our Secretary Treasurer Rudnicki. Number 5, it'll be 5.1 is the teacher collective agreement update. So if you could fill us in, please. Mr. Rudnicki.
So I just wanted to give you a brief update on the collective agreement, and it has to do with retro pay that teachers were entitled to. And so just want to let everyone know that teachers have been paid their retroactive adjustment and back pay on September 25th. And that the only thing outstanding for teachers is the first portion, which will happen by month's end. So happy to report we're the first in the province to do that. And so I really want to express my gratitude and thanks to my payroll department. They worked a lot of hard and long hours to calculate and get that paid out so that the teachers can see some of the benefits of that agreement. So that's what I wanted to report on today.
Letting us know. I'm sure teachers are happy. Yes.
On a personal note, that meant that my people could buy olive oil and dishwasher detergent in the same day. They were very excited about that. Major investment.
Questions or comments? Good. Thank you. And next we have a promissory note. And we have a motion, proposed board motion. Before I read it, perhaps Secretary Rudnicki can explain to us.
Yeah, so this is a promissory note that was issued by the province to reimburse us for expenditures for 2 projects. The first one being Island Lakes Community School, the modular classrooms that are currently being built. They are reimbursing us a little over $1 million. And the second portion is reimbursement for Ecole Sage Creek Ponte Vista in the amount of $8.4 million. And so that's where we get the reimbursement of $9.45 and $700 from the province.
Thank you. So the motion is that the issue of the promissory note LTPS 0746, did I say that right?
Yep.
As it is deemed necessary and expedient to raise by loan the sum of $9,425,700 on the credit of the Louis Riel School Division for the purpose of financing capital projects be approved. Need a mover, seconder, Trustee Polachek, Trustee Semignola. Any comments or questions on this? Yes, Trustee Palmquist.
Question for clarification. So just the purpose of this motion is that we adopt this in order to accept the funds from the province?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, obviously, yes. I wanted to just quickly vis-a-vis the attachment, just to understand each column there. The maximum support is the denotes the total amount that the province committed.
Correct.
And supportable expenditure is the percentage of the total project cost that the province is covering?
It
Or
is,
not percentage, but the portion.
yeah, so how the reimbursement works is that on a periodic basis, once a month, and on quarterly, we submit invoices to the province for reimbursement of capital expenditure. And so at the time of issuing this debenture, we had put in $54,357. But knowing that the capital project is on an expedited schedule, they're upfronting us the remainder of the dollars because by this time we've almost spent probably close to $1 million.
Right.
And so that's, they're giving us a little over $1 million. The second line item is Sage Creek School. And so we have put in a reimbursement for roughly $8.4 million, which they're honoring.
Being the final installment or near second from last, maybe installment of what the total commitment from the province was?
It depends how many installments they're gonna.
And
do.
installment.
It's, yeah, and installment.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? We'll call the motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Good.
Corporate CEO.
Next, we move on then to board education, section of our public meetings where we discuss an issue and give our views. Today, we're hoping to look at an issue that we have had there have been some articles and there's been some emails back and forth about the issue of school fundraising and what's the word I'm looking for?
Equity?
Equity, I was gonna say equitability, but equity of how this works out. Some schools having more wealthy parents, some schools having less wealthy parents. What mechanisms can be put in place, if any, to make sure that all of our schools receive the same funding and the same things, pluses that each other schools receive. So I know there was also someone from the Winnipeg School Division took stance on this as well, just recently. That was in the paper. Superintendent, that was in the paper as well. So I just wanted to open up the floor to see if anyone has any thoughts or comments. We don't have to make any decisions today, but it's good to air our thoughts out for the future to see if we can possibly come to some decisions down the line. So Trustee Walker raised his hand.
So I teach at Hampstead School, River East Transcona School Division. It's located in a community with lots of folks that are living in poverty and that don't have the time or ability to participate in our parent council. So when we needed to replace our playground a number of years ago, it was the school teachers and the educational assistants in the school that ended up writing grants and fundraising to build the playground. And we did get it built, but it really highlighted the inequity of the system, because there are schools in communities where there's a lot more wealth that can easily fundraise that amount of money to build playgrounds, to buy technology that can be used in the school, to pay for field trips that our school community isn't able to access. So I've spent a great deal of time thinking about how we might address that, but it seems to me that that's a part of public education, having a playground, ensuring that kids have opportunities to go on field trips and have all of the technology that they require, especially nowadays when we have cell phone bans. We need to make sure that we have enough technology in our schools so that kids don't need to have cell phones to access the so it seems to me that the public should be funding these things. It shouldn't be contingent on the school community to be fundraising for this type.
Yes, Trustee Palmquist.
Just a comment. I mean, I don't fully understand the sort of end game for Winnipeg School Division, like what they want out of this. I mean, I certainly think it's a bold decision they're doing, in the sense that I could be mistaken, but I would expect that Winnipeg School Division is probably the one that has the most disparity of any division in terms of income, including basically the wealthiest neighborhoods in the city and the poorest, and those in between. And I think that I speak a little bit personally to say that I've heard the story told around my household many times. My wife's first teaching position at Robert H. Smith School in Winnipeg School Division. This was a school where there was a tremendous amount of almost effortless fundraising taking place. Checks were being written routinely off of a simple email from the PAC for hundreds, thousands of dollars. Sometimes there were massive amounts of educational resources, not just like perks, but like genuine improvements to the academic experience that were everywhere in the school. And at the same time, pointing out Trustee Walker's comment, and in my previous role as working at City Hall, I worked a lot alongside parent fundraising groups and PACs, particularly on school playground projects. The CIGP grant and the Land Dedication Reserve grant were two of the major funding pools that many parent groups tap into for capital projects like playgrounds. So I had occasion to see firsthand the huge disparity between those communities that were able to mobilize those resources, because typically these were matching funds. So we would be able to come forward and say, oh yeah, from here, our office, we can provide you a $70,000 grant, but you have to come up with 70,000. I mean, it's a good deal, but there were many communities where that 70,000 from outside of City Winnipeg sources just wasn't there. And at the same time, I would be reluctant to pursue any kind of direction which essentially closed the door to money that was available. I mean, in spite of the inequities, if there are people in the community who are willing to cut gigantic checks for projects that are beneficial to the school, it would be a shame to let that sail past in the name of equity. I think that I'm not sure how exactly this be operationalized, but if I were to have a preferred direction, it would be something along the lines of perhaps some kind of equalization scheme, similar to the way provinces share revenues amongst each other. They might send money from Alberta to New Brunswick and so on. I think that is a model that could be considered. I don't know if it would be possible to bring them into total alignment, but if you could, or perhaps even a partnership model, the wealthiest school in the division gets partnered with the poorest school in the division, and down like some kind of tiered ladder like that. And until you ended up with your middle income schools roughly at the same level, having a little disparity between them. So I think there's a number of opportunities to go. I think that recognizing sort of almost like maybe this is the right phrase. I don't think this is what Matt Henderson is doing, but in a way it feels like a sort of a manufactured crisis. Like they're bringing this undealt with, untackled structural problem sort of to a head by this crash approach to it. And I think that it's very possible that some positive outcomes will come out of this tactic, this approach. I think in the long run, it would be wrong. It would be a missed opportunity to lose out on private fundraising. But I fundamentally do agree that they're in a public education system. There are students getting a better education than others in a public system. Not just getting free field trips and other cool perks, but like fundamental tools, laptops that are working versus those that are broken, books that are available versus that are vandalized or missing, and et cetera. So I think that we should look at those inequities, but I wouldn't support a total ban.
Sam Maniola and then Nemeth.
Yeah, I think, I guess to take maybe a different position on this. I think if the inequity is rising out of ability to apply for certain grants, and that's a barrier, I think maybe that's something that that we can look at as a board is how do we make that fair? But the private fundraising where one school is raising from their community, from their grandparents, their uncles, whatever fundraising that they're doing to improve the experience. Obviously, some schools have had much more success at this than others. I think taking that away also takes away a completely different experience, 1-to-1. I just don't see a situation where one school will raise 100,000 and then just say, of this 40,000, we want to give it to this particular school. Or even just pitching that to family and friends to say, we are doing this fundraiser and we're gonna be giving half of this money to 2 or 3 other schools, because that fundraising, what makes it so impactful to raise that kind of money is that your family and friends and your neighbors are supporting something that you're doing at your school. But I think there's a way to address the grant writing if that's not, that's being fallen back into operations with teachers and EAs, and maybe there's a way that we can support in that regard. I don't want to confuse things with operationalize that support learning with recreational, like we talk about at the playground, and most playground, those playgrounds are owned by the city, right? And some of them are connected, yeah, like, so it's not it's a school, but it adds to the experience of some sort of partnership there. That's kind of where I stand. From where I see it, and I just want to kind of share what my business.
And just on that point, some of the schools like Sage Creek have playground that's on city land, but a lot of the schools have playground that's on their own land. So we have sort of a mixed bag there,
But it's not
depending on their
operational.
space.
Like during budget, we don't say, let's give.
We don't have budgets for the playgrounds.
Exactly, that's what-
They're done by funding from the individuals.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, we should not confuse operationalization of budget for that versus enhancing the experience where it's done locally, and if that's a change we're looking to make, then that also should also be part of the conversation. I just don't want those two to be confused with continuing the discussion. That's the point of something.
That's a good point, yeah. Trustee Norton.
Well, I think as a board, we're not gonna make a massive change in terms of what society has expected for a long time. But I think we have a role to play in terms of providing data to our community during budget times. So how much money have certain schools, you know, without naming the school, here's how much fundraising has occurred. And this is supplementing public education. So I think when it comes to budget time, we have a responsibility to be making sure that the public knows that the government is not funding sufficiently what it is we need. So that's part of our responsibility now. I think it's gathering that information and making sure that people understand, here's the discrepancy between some of our schools who are raising this much money over the last five years, and here's how much others have raised. And then I think this also goes to, should be noted for our budget conversation. We accomplished a lot with the full day K. This would return to the conversation about school fees and how we might address that inequity first before we go to this fundraising inequity, because that school fee situation is significant and it affects every kid from K to 12. So that should be part of our budget conversation the next time we're looking at how we can best support equity. For me, this is a small piece of that, and I think we have some responsibility in terms of making sure the public understands what it is. I don't think that canceling fundraising at this point, the public's not ready for that. We have a better chance of doing some education and pressure on the government through these conversations.
The conversation that's not being had in this article that was attached to the agenda item is around funding of public education in our province. And if we agree that part of the public school experience is making sure that you have adequate supplies, that you have the opportunity to play at recess, and that you have playground equipment or baseballs or whatever it is, and that you have the opportunity to participate in what they're calling enrichment opportunities, that is, you know, going to the zoo or going to wherever it is. If we agree that that is part of what we want for every child in public education in Manitoba, then the government should fund accordingly. And that is where there is a lot of the have and have not, is that it all comes down to opportunities. And when we talk about adequate funding, talk about you know, teachers and classroom resources, but we need to think a little bit more holistically, which is what a lot of these fundraising efforts go into, is all the extras, right? How unfortunate that enough school supplies and playground and recess equipment and the opportunity to take field trips has to be considered an extra by some schools, to the extent that unless parents raise the money for it, the kids aren't going to get it. That is something that really troubles me. And so for me, the conversation is, at an absolute minimum, what do we want every kid to experience between kindergarten and the time they graduate high school? And whatever that is, let's make sure that the schools have what they need to be able to offer that. Because you're still going to have, even if you curtail the fundraising, you're still going to have whole school communities where families and parents just can't afford some of the extras, fundraising or not. And to me, we do students and our young people a real disservice by not recognizing that it shouldn't be considered an extra to have all the pencils and erasers and stuff that you need, or a laptop cart that doesn't have to be, you know, like there's a tug of war over it, or whatever it is, right? So for me, this is a conversation about funding that is adequate based on what we as a society feel we want that experience for our students. So just another way perhaps to explore it.
Thank you. Other? Yes. No.
It's school fundraising as a parent and as a teacher and as a community member has always been something we needed to look at, and there has been inequities. I also believe that schools should be properly funded. I ran on that in my campaign that you know, we need to lobby government. I don't know if that's ever going to, you know, happen the way we want it to happen. I think there will be inequities in our communities and our schools for a long time. Fundraising is important for us to look at, as far as when Trustee Palmquist was talking about some schools who have the ability to really not even worry about it, just write a check, because we will have those schools and those communities. And of course, that's how society is, and that's how we have to look at it through that lens. But I'm of the mind that there might be a place for some kind of fundraising. I'm not sure that we can solve it around this table. I think we need to do some deep community consultations to see what they feel like. I think at the very least, every school should have access to a decent playground, a safe playground. They, as Trustee Nemeth talked about, she was 100% right with the computers. They shouldn't have to be a tug of war. And we can do all that thinking as long as we have some kind of plan in place. So I think we all need to talk about this more and talk with our community and see where they feel.
Thank you. That's a wonderful conversation. I thank everyone for your contributions. This is very, someone else? Did I miss someone? Oh, yes.
I feel like I have
By all
to
means,
comment,
yes.
given my
Please do.
portfolio, and I guess what, you know, a shift that I've seen over the last number of years within the senior leadership team and with the support of the board and with our school leaders is equity and anti-racist work is work that is a lens that we have to look at everything through. And so and what I want to reassure you, because the topic has come up a few times, is our IS department was actually one of the first at the departmental level who said, let's redo how we look at computer allocation and all of that, and looked at it through an equity lens. And so I think it's important to acknowledge that it isn't like it is a lens that we need to address everything that we see with whose voices are at the table, whose aren't, which schools are we spending most of our time on, all of those pieces. And so I just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated, thank you. But this is an issue, then again, I don't want to lose track of this, I don't want to go away, so I'm going to bookmark this to be brought back at a later date and get some more thought on it, and perhaps we can, with the board's permission, we can have a mandate, perhaps Superintendent Cormack and Secretary Nikki to come up with a small report about the fundraising and what grants are available and what we do to assist folks in the community who want those grants. Just a brief report would be helpful. Okay. I think Trustee Walker is
Just doing some math in my head and how much I've collected in school fees for my students, and I'm wondering if it would be possible to get a better understanding of how much our schools, the school communities are collecting in school fees. Just so we have an idea of how much money it would, cost us if we were to publicly fund that. And then also the cost of playgrounds, and anything, field trips, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Get a better understanding of, what the cost would.
Yeah, during last
these are a
budget,
bit of a separate issue, but we did have those numbers recently for our budget.
during last budget season, we brought those, I brought those numbers forward, and that's easy to get to.
Sorry, I keep interrupting. Perhaps you could just email those to the
I'd have to recalculate the.
Okay. And Trustee Palmquist?
I wonder if there's going to be a follow-up conversation to this, if it might be relevant to bring the loop back the discussion that we were gonna have about the future of the Re-Elevate program too. I mean, I know that there was some talk at a recent meeting of like us having sort of general conversations about like where, what's next for Re-Elevate in relationship to the board and so on. And there being like an existing incorporated nonprofit organization that is in place. I wonder maybe if, I'm not really pitching anything specific here, just more to say in general, the work of fundraising undertaken by PACs, undertaken by parent volunteers, or in the case of, as Trustee Walker pointed out, are undertaken by staff when there aren't the conditions in a school don't permit there to be parents who have the time or energy or experience to be able to take on that volunteer labor. And then building further off of an idea that Trustee Nemeth came up with last year, was talking about pardon me, I'm sorry, Sandy, you were talking about, okay, I lost my train of thought of how it connected. I'm sorry, it was so relevant to what you said and it's gone. It's gone. But you had a good idea that I liked and I thought there was a connection to it. It's gone. Sorry, I'll think of it and.
I think the issue is the Re-Elevate is because it's partnered with this.
Sorry, you had talked about the idea of there being funds for like sort of open-ended funds for exceptional, when there were individual unique asks for funding from individual students, rising stars, exceptional students who might come forward. I believe at the time there had been a sort of unique funding ask from a student to the division for a project that didn't fit in an existing box that came forward, and there'd been talk about like how might we support that type of thing, that type of above and beyond initiative on the part of students before, and that tied into my thoughts around around whether or not we can have any capacity to tap into some of those grants, funding sources, et cetera, internally without essentially depending on volunteers, depending on outside stakeholders, et cetera.
Just as a frame of reference or just for knowledge for the board, my department provides support to all PACs when it comes to report writing and procurement and financial reporting for all grants. They're not left to the wind or anything like that. There are specific things that PACs need to do when looking at fundraising and what supports the division can provide. Just as an instance, I went to a PAC meeting last Tuesday night and talked about the types of supports we could provide them as a division when they go on an endeavor of fundraising, whether it's for a playground project or other things. So it's not like they're floundering or whatnot. And the schools that don't have PACs, the administration uses us as resources as well to tap into grants and stuff like that. So there are supports in place for PACs as well as schools that don't have PACs.
All right, so I think we've covered this quite well. I thank everyone for your participation. We can move on then to senior leadership team information to the board. First of all is the capital projects update. And over to our superintendent, who can turn it to someone else if he wishes.
Yes, so we're going to provide the board with 3 updates this evening. An update on Sage Creek Bonavista Vista, where we've secured all the money from the province, the funding required to finish the project. And our Secretary Treasurer will update us on the progress being made for the school to open its doors in September 25. He'll also update us on the Island Lakes Community School project, where here again, we secured funding for 2 modular classrooms that are on site as we speak. And I updated the community staff and families today about those 2 modular classrooms and the progress being made. And we have approval from the province to move 2 modular classrooms from École Saint-Germain to Island Lakes Community School. And the holdup now is with the city and permitting. We've secured funding for that and the province's approval, and we have contractors ready to go. We need the city on board. And then I'm going to ask Assistant Superintendent Cadez to provide us an update on J.H. Bruns Collegiate. He attended a PAC meeting last week. Also in attendance at the PAC meeting were trustees Garrier and Walker, and they could also provide their perspective on that meeting. The community, of course, in J.H. Bruns Collegiate, at J.H. Bruns Collegiate, want to know when are we going to build the addition and make the renovations happen. And again, it's about securing the funds from the province. These kind of capital projects are funded by the provincial government. And our latest conversations, because we have meetings regularly with government, indicate that they see it as a #1 priority, because it is our #1 priority. The addition to J.H. Bruns Collegiate. Our second priority are renovations to the Spears Road building where Collège Béliveau is. And our third priority is funding and approval for renovations at the Cottonwood building where the Windsor Park Collegiate Community is at present, but where eventually we will have a much bigger French immersion population occupy the building. And so I'll let like I said, Assistant Superintendent Cadez add some details that I've offered. But first, I'm handing it over to our Secretary Treasurer.
Very much. So sadly, I didn't get any pictures this week, so no pictures, but I can report that the building is the construction is 55% complete. Very exciting. So the foundation and the superstructure are complete. The exterior envelope is 61% complete, and they have worked. Then they've started to work on the interior, and they're currently in process of doing rough-ins, drywall, and finishing up the CMU walls in the interior of the building. And landscape is 31% complete. So we're still on track for a fall 2025 opening, which is really exciting. As for Island Lakes Community School, we have the new modular classrooms have arrived and are now in its place. The paving contractor completed the access lane on September 28th. Installation of the steel access ramp and staircases is currently underway. The exterior transformer has been placed, complete with underground conduits for connections to the existing main distribution, fire alarm, and data rack. And mechanical HVAC will be commissioned in the classrooms once power is available. Upon completion of all work is on site by the general contractor, the architect, structural, mechanical, and electrical consultants will all visit the site for final inspection and certification. Once that's complete, we will be able to apply to the city for their final inspection and request the occupancy permit. And we are currently working towards an October 25th occupancy date, or sooner if possible. So that's where we're at with Island Lakes.
And for J.H. Bruns Collegiate, I can just add that we had a meeting with the parent community there, the Parent Advisory Council. Had around 25 members of the community show up for the meeting, presented me with some questions ahead of time. And so I was able to go and present a little bit about the future projections for J.H. Bruns Collegiate, including an overview of the process of how those projections are calculated and the factors that are brought into that discussion. And also to reiterate the point that the renovation at J.H. Bruns Collegiate continues to be the top priority for the school division in terms of our renovation projects when we're speaking with the province.
Trustees Carey or Walker may want to add to what they heard.
It was a really interesting, wonderful meeting. We had very committed parents, and I think it was very interesting for me to see the number of high school parents at a parent council meeting, as well as some of the feeder school parents who didn't have children yet at J.H. Bruns, but were going to have children there. So it was really important for us to meet and greet you all. And we were there for a couple of hours, and I think we all learned from each other, and it's a really positive meeting. Trustee Walker?
I think the leadership team did an excellent job answering the parents' questions, and I commended the parents on being so involved in their school community. It's always nice as an educator to see folks being involved in their children's education. Thank you so much for.
Do you have any questions or comments on the three items under the capital projects update? None. Thank you very much. That's excellent news. We'll now move on to 7.2, which is the staff learning day. Took place on September 23rd, 2024. Superintendent will give us some information on this.
Yeah, well, it's always important to let the community know what occurs on a non-instructional day. And September 23rd was a day common to everyone in LRSD, all 40 schools. And I just want to highlight how for a few of the schools, it was their treaty education day. So we have a treaty education initiative in the province of Manitoba. And we have a plan to have the treaty education be a focus for everyone in LRSD. And on September 23rd, the J.H. Bruns Collegiate Family of Schools, Sage Creek, both the French and English, both the French immersion and English programs, and the Windsor Park Collegiate Family of Schools, as well as ATC, the Arts and Technology Center, all were involved in the Treaty Education Initiative. So they're the first of the schools to learn alongside members of the instructional team and the Indigenous education. And I've heard back from folks in those schools, from colleagues and from the team that who are responsible for facilitating the day of learning was tremendously positive and has me very confident about the next schools that will have an opportunity to focus on treaty education. So that's what I wanted to share. Staff learning, a lot more was learned on that day, but given the late hour, we can move on to the next agenda. If there are questions, folks.
Questions or comments on the staff learning day? Great day. So we will now move on to 7.3, which is the Truth and Reconciliation Week in preparation for Truth and Reconciliation Day.
And so we had, as part of Trustee Nemeth and Assistant Superintendent Cadez is sharing earlier in the meeting, we had colleagues at this table highlight the importance of the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation that was celebrated yesterday in our schools for, in some instances, for the whole month of September, and in other instances for at least last week. There have been a tremendous number of activities organized to ready the student community and the staff community to commemorate Orange Shirt Day. And so those activities included assemblies, community walks, and art projects, all with the purpose of raising awareness of the history and legacy of residential schools and to promote reconciliation. So lots of education initiatives. Teachers incorporated lessons about truth and reconciliation into a variety of lessons using literature, videos, invited guests, facilitating discussions. We've seen a tremendous amount of community engagements, schools involving the community in events, inviting parents, grandparents, Indigenous leaders, and the community in general to participate in activities that included feasts and cleanses and educational sessions. So a tremendous effort to foster solidarity with the community in our commitment, our shared commitment to reconciliation. Also a tremendous number of creative projects, students participating in collective art projects where they express in an artistic way their understanding of truth and reconciliation and contribute to supporting Indigenous communities through their artistic creativity. And all of this is an ongoing commitment on the part of our schools. It's clear that our schools understand that the work of truth and reconciliation isn't about a day of commemoration, that it is ongoing, extends beyond one day of commemoration, and they are committed to a year-long journey of learning with and from and about Indigenous communities, as well as promoting understanding. And so I've asked the communications team to put together in greater detail what I'm sharing with you this evening, in greater detail how all of the tremendous learning and growth this last month, and especially last week, sharing that with the community in a spotlight. So you can look forward to that in the coming days.
Wonderful. Questions or comments on this report? Just, echoing something that Trustee Nemeth said earlier, I remember the days, actually the last time I was chair, when the Orange Shirt Day was just a nascent idea that sort of was bubbling, and we were thinking about it, and it was popping up here and there in certain schools across Canada, and very proud that this board, the school division, took it on early. Started early, and we had some of the first programs in the city and the province for Orange Shirt Day, and look how it's grown, and look how important an aspect of our culture and our education that it's become to recognize the wrongs of the past and to work toward righting them and to working towards better relationships. Makes me very proud. Thank you for all the hard work, and thank our staff and everyone in all our schools for everything they do on that portfolio. Now we move on to policy. This is again something that's a very important job of this board. And we have a number of policies to look at. Today, it's a constant job to review them and to keep them fresh and to keep them relevant. And to do that, we have a roadmap that shows us the way. And Superintendent Michalik and Assistant Superintendent Anderson will show us that, give us a glimpse of that roadmap.
No, so it's an audacious roadmap. We've got lots of policy coming your way over the course of the next few meetings. And policies that aren't even showing up on the roadmap, given the new teacher collective agreement that will obligate us to further review policies that may need to be changed or rescinded. And some of that is coming to you very specifically later this evening after Assistant Superintendent Anderson presents to you the very bold and ambitious policy roadmap for 24-25.
Very good, thank you very much. So the table that you have before you is divided into various sections. The first section is a list of about a dozen policies that have been identified for priority review. Some of these that are highlighted in green have already come before the board and been revised. Others you will see are in various stages of review and will come to you later on in the school year. The second table, again, with approximately a dozen policies in it. Again, these policies have been identified for priority review. These ones, though, are all connected to the Teachers Provincial Collective Agreement and ensuring alignment between our policy manual and the new collective agreement. We don't want to have a disconnection between the two that would cause confusion. So this is a process that we have begun meeting with Assistant Superintendent Jean-Paul, other members of her department. We have sat down as well with LRTA to share some of the work that we intend to be doing. So this will unfold. And as Superintendent Michalik alluded to, what you see before you is what we know right now. But our understanding of the collective agreement is continuing to evolve, and there may be other policies that need to be added to this list of policies for review. The next section of the document shares several policies that are in development at this time. You'll see two of them that have come before you for first reading this year already. Communication with staff and use of cell phones in schools. Those have come before you for first reading. The use of cell phones in schools will come for second reading later this evening. Another policy that will come for first reading this evening is one on progressive discipline. And I will share some more detail around that when we come to that later in the agenda. The fourth policy in this section is one exploring corporate partnerships, donations, and sponsorships. This has seen two readings by the board and has been on the back burner for a little while. We do understand that fundraising and is a question that the provincial government is looking into at this time, and this will be tied with that. So a pause on policy development in this area is warranted at this time. The following tables list policies that are either currently under review or that are due for review. And just to share with you what we do in our school division to ensure that policies are continue to be relevant and current, we targeted a cycle of 5 years to review them. You can see, looking at a number of policies that were deferred from last year, we've been playing catch up since COVID. We got a little bit behind in our policy review, but we are soldiering on bravely and hope to tackle this list over the course of the school year. And these policies, the review process looks different depending on exactly the nature of the policy and if there have been legislative changes or other frameworks that have been released by the provincial government that need to be taken into consideration. Some of them are very straightforward. Others are a little bit more involved, but we do consult our community in these processes. Typically, our staff community is involved in all policy revision, and certain policies that are of greater interest to the broader public are included in public-wide consultations as well. And that brings us to one last item to mention to you that as part of the accessibility initiative province-wide, we are working to ensure compliance with the communication standard, and that will involve updating our policy presentation on the website so that they are more readily accessible to members of the public that are using various communication devices, and the features that they rely upon are not necessarily compatible with the presentation we currently have. So that is a step that we are working towards completing.
Thank you. Questions or comments on the roadmap? I just wanted to comment for the folks who are watching or listening to us that again, as I said, policy is a very important part of our work as a board, but it's not just sitting around dreaming up new policies for things that new issues that we may be facing. Most of the work is making sure that our policies comply with changes with new collective agreements. Our policies comply with the legislation. It's a lot of work, and we thank Assistant Superintendent Anderson team and everyone involved in all that's done to keep our policies relevant and fresh. Thank you. So that moves us on to actual policy. The Policy Review Committee, we're looking first at two policies that need to be rescinded. These are policies that need to be rescinded because of the new provincial collective agreement. And this would be policy GCKA, reassignment transfer of teachers, and policy GCKB, transfer of administrators. So perhaps Superintendent Anderson can give us a little explanation.
Yes, the new collective agreement that has been adopted province-wide contains very specific language around transfer of teachers and transfer of administrators, making these two policies redundant, and keeping them in our policy manual could lead to confusion amongst teachers. So the impetus for bringing them forward this evening is to ensure that everyone understands that we got the memo about the provincial collective agreement and will be abiding by the terms that are articulated.
And if I understand correctly, these don't need first, second, or third readings. It's just rescinded.
Correct.
Okay, so I'll read the motion. Following policies reviewed by the Policy Review Committee be rescinded effective immediately in order to ensure coherence with the MSBA, yes, Provincial Collective Agreement. Policy GCKA, reassignment transfer of teachers. Policy GCKB, transfer of administrators. I'll need a mover and a seconder. Call check, Trustee Semignola. Questions or comments? There aren't any. I'll call. Yes.
No, I do have a question.
Yes.
So these are being rescinded and they will come to us. They will come to us at a later date, but we have a timeline knowing that there's been a lot going on. negotiation on the bargain, as well as timeline, will we see this in 2 weeks, 3
I
weeks?
understand that rescinded, they're just gone because they've been supplanted by the,
Also, there's no more transfer.
no, our policy for transferring and reassignment will be done under the collective agreement. Is that correct?
The articles in the collective agreement speak to transfers. The policies are then not coherent, complicate, only confuse the rules to follow. So the rules that we all should follow now, adhere to, are spelled out in the collective agreement. That is, and it applies to the whole of the province, and this is why it's so essential that we do our part as a school division to ensure coherence. Because we now are all living under a provincial collective agreement.
But if I think that I'm understanding, I maybe misunderstood you. You're asking if we need new policies that
No.
mirror that. We
The
just go by.
collective agreement.
Yeah, so those ones, I thought said they're being rescinded for review, but they're also being counted.
They're being rescinded.
Rescinded-
So these two
rescinded
policies are being removed
removed.
because it matters that we all understand that the articles in the collective agreement are the rules relative to reassignment and transfer.
Yeah, maybe I'm not presenting this the right way, because there's them being on a list to be reviewed is one thing. If they were previously existing, but they were just being reviewed to add something else, that's another thing.
Right.
So we'll say they're being rescinded from the list to be reviewed, and they're also not gonna exist anymore.
They're being rescinded from your policy manual.
They're being erased from the policy manual completely.
Okay,
So there's no review need.
No.
It's just done. Does that help?
I'm just looking at the motion now, right? All motion being rescinded by the policy review.
They're not on the review list.
It has been reviewed by the policy review committee.
So we did the work of,
Rescinded.
we did the work of, identifying these policies for rescindment. And now we're bringing this recommendation to you as a board.
So it's reviewed past tense.
And it's an opportunity for me to add that we've had also, so you know, we've ensured dialogue with the LRTA, with the New Real Teachers Association, before bringing this to you this evening.
So we're all clear. Can we call the question? Those in favor?
Yeah, mine's not pulling up either.
Yes,
We have hands
Yeah,
that
yeah.
are missing, yeah.
and Mr. Seminola, yes.
So that motion is carried, they are rescinded. Next, we have a first reading, policy review committee update. And this is regarding progressive discipline and administrative protocol supporting that. So before reading the motion, I'll pass this over to trustee, Superintendent Jeff.
Thank you. So historically, policy GCNA, which deals with teacher supervision and sorry, I'll read the exact title, Policy GCNA Supervision, Instructional and Teaching Staff. This policy has addressed both progressive discipline and professional growth for teaching staff. The Allure Real Teachers Association has expressed a desire for these two matters to be dealt with under distinct policies. And this is a view supported by the senior leadership team. While the new policy has been in development for some time, it was advisable to await release of the provincial collective agreement before proceeding with bringing this new policy before you this evening. In developing the policy, I worked very closely with staff services, Assistant Superintendent Jean Paul and her team. And we also consulted the division's legal counsel, who reviewed an earlier version of this policy, and his recommendations were incorporated into the version that is being presented to you this evening for your consideration. Moving forward, presuming that first reading will be given this evening. We want you to know that employee groups will be consulted in advance of second reading. A spotlight story will be published inviting staff to provide feedback on the draft policy. A working group of principals and vice principals is being formed to provide feedback on the draft policy. And that feedback, along with that collected from employee groups and through the spotlight story, will shape the draft policy for second reading that we're aiming to bring to you on November 5th. And then third reading at the second meeting in November on the 19th. Related to the changes coming forward, this working group will also be looking at policy GCNA to update it, because essentially policy GCNA, we're taking a chunk of it out and putting it in this new policy. So we're going to have to remove a chunk that is currently in GCNA. And policy GCKC, staff development, teaching staff, also warrants review at the same time. So this working group will consider the necessary changes to these policies, and we would bring them to you also on the 19th, so that when the new policy receives third reading, the existing policies are updated to align with it. And also for your information, we are forecasting that the agenda of the November 14th leadership team meeting will have all three of these policies on it, as they are central to the work that our school administrators do on a daily basis. And we want to ensure that there is understanding and opportunity for questions during the development process from all administrators.
So this is Jean-Paul, any?
No, nothing to add.
Again, this is a new thing. It's the first reading, plenty of time to, we'll have a chance to review it, but there will be plenty of time, as Anderson said, to get feedback from the public and feedback from other stakeholders. Does anyone have any comments or questions at this time regarding these changes? No, okay. Then we'll call the question, the following policy.
Can you move for in a second?
Sorry?
I'll move. We have
I was gonna read it first.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm supposed to read it today. I had a question.
I thought you had it. Sorry.
I'll keep that in mind, though. Thank you. It's always, I always have to look around, get somebody. Following policy reviewed by Policy Review Committee received first reading and be further reviewed in committee, brought back for second and third reading at a future date. Policy GCQF and GDQD, progressive discipline, teaching and non-teaching staff, administrative protocol supported by policy GCQF GDQD, moved by trustee Nemeth, seconded by trustee Walker. I'll call the question. Oh, very good. That is passed. Thank you very much. Yes, I did ask for comments before I called the question. I remember now. Next is another policy review, and this is policy GBEF JICJ, second reading. And this is the one that I'll let Superintendent Anderson tell us about.
Very good, thank you. You'll recall giving first reading to this policy on September 3rd, the very first day back after summer break. And this is in response to direction from the Minister of Education that all school divisions need to develop policy governing the use of cell phones in schools before November the 1st. So after first reading was received on September the 3rd, we began a very robust consultation phase that our school principals were extremely helpful in activating. They arranged opportunities for school staff, for parents, for students to engage in the survey. And we heard back from 1,154 people. In terms of engagement on a policy, that's a really impressive number. Some policies don't garner nearly so much interest. So the exciting part of the feedback, and if I can get you to click on summer report in the attachments, you'll see that among the 1,154 respondents, we had 73% were staff members, 21% were parents, guardians, and caregivers, 5% were students, and 1% were both the staff and parent hat. And in terms of the feedback that we received, similar numbers as well, but across the groups, the overwhelming message is that the community is supportive of this policy as it is at 72%. 22% felt some minor revisions were necessary, and 5% felt some major revisions were necessary, and 1% could be classified in those three categories. So wanting to share that the comments that were received, because folks had the opportunity just to provide comments, free flow, open text box comments. The one important element that came was the need for the policy to address other related technologies like smartwatches. And that was a question I recall that came up from trustees at a meeting on September the 3rd. This came back from the community as well. And the version that you have before you this evening does indeed address that. Another point that came out is the importance of educating students on appropriate cell phone use. And that is more or less saying that they agree with the policy. That is one of the elements of the policy, that a ban is not nearly as effective as developing information literacy skills. So that is embedded in our policy. There was a desire for greater clarity, a lot of questions around very small points, like very precise points that are important for the execution of this policy in any given school, but may look different from one school to the other. So the process that the board endorsed in given first reading was for each school to engage in conversations, parents, students, staff, around the development of common cell phone practices. And these common cell phone practices need to respect certain criteria that the minister outlined in his announcement in August, and other points that are open for interpretation. So wanting you to know that, and for those listeners this evening who are looking for greater clarity, that I am hopeful that greater clarity will come as those school-based conversations have unfolded and will continue to unfold. And last was a desire for consistency across schools. And this is, I guess this remains to be seen, because our schools are working on developing common cell phone practices at this time. And they will be submitting these practices divisionally. We'll have a chance to look at what the similarities and differences are across schools, and to be able to assess whether some harmonization is required or not. The need for flexibility among schools, however, is certainly needed, because it necessarily looks different in schools that have lockers versus schools that don't have lockers, and so on and so forth. Schools with high school students, schools with elementary students. So I have shared those points with you. This evening, and perhaps Jamie, I could get you to open the version that shows the edits. So in the version that is before you this evening, you will see that there have been some additions made to the policy section, and this was in response to feedback that we had from those that engaged in the process, wanting to make clear what the purpose of the policy is. That this is about our shared intent of reducing the number of distractions in classrooms and minimizing the impact of harmful effects of social media and online platforms. So really wanting to make that quite clear as to why we're undertaking this. And the first guideline, A, has been added, and this states that consistent with the intent outlined above, it is expected that devices that have similar functions to cell phones, such as tablets and smartwatches, will be treated similarly to cell phones. So more or less saying, if it walks like a duck, we'll treat it like a duck. So that are the changes that I would like to present to you for consideration for the second reading this evening. And in terms of moving forward from here, we foresee having a broad communication campaign with staff and families to advise them of the changes that have been made at the second reading phase, and soliciting further feedback from them in advance of adoption of third reading, which needs to occur, as mentioned last time, before November 1st, as directed by the minister. So this will be a very tight turnaround time between second and third reading between this and your next October meeting.
Thank you. So it's a hot topic, hot issue. Any questions or comments on this? Just the Bernheim and then trustee Nemeth.
So forgive me if I haven't noticed before, but the reference to the multi-year strategic plan in this policy, is that something that we're doing consistently now, where it's appropriate, like that this policy applies directly to one of the strategies or goals in the multi-year strategic plan? Because that makes a lot of sense to me. It specifically jumped out on this one. So if that is not something that we've considered, I know not all policies will have that opportunity, but those that do, that's a great way to bring multi-year strategic plan to life in a much more strategic way. So I really appreciated that part.
Very good.
Yeah.
Happy to do so on a go forward basis.
Yeah.
Trustee Nemeth?
I don't believe that when we solicit feedback, we formally engage our parent councils. There was a time when we did that, right? Policy went to parent councils and gave an opportunity to provide any feedback. As we talk more and more about board and community engagement or board and parent engagement, I'm just wondering if sometimes the question or something we want to think about is there sufficient, that's what I'm looking for, like parent and student, like all policies apply to the community, but in this particular case, parent voice has been pretty substantive. If requesting formally feedback from parent councils with the timeline, of course, knowing that schools that don't have parent councils, there are parents that are seen as school leaders. If that might not broaden some of the feedback or just reinforce some of, I mean, it would be a change to what we normally do, but this particular instance, there might be value in deliberately going that route. I don't know, it's just a thought.
And we didn't communicate directly from senior admin to parent groups, but we did ask our principals to do that on our behalf.
Okay.
To engage their parent council discussions. So I know at various parent council meetings, this was placed on the agenda and was a topic of discussion. Similarly, with staff, we had asked that time be allocated during the last staff meeting for staff to engage in the forum to provide feedback. So I do know that some schools did that same format, that while they were at the parent council meeting, they talked about it and folks went in and submitted feedback directly. I guess if you would like a more formal, this is the opinion of a pack of school A, B, or C, we could have a more formal communication chain. But this certainly has shown to be effective in getting a number of voices heard.
And same with students, I'm assuming, is it, that's the way it's.
Correct.
Okay.
And for students, you'll see, at least I can infer from looking at the time that some of these were completed, that they will have been done as part of their grade 9 Canada in a Contemporary World course. And teachers talked about this is what the role of school boards is, and this is how they solicit feedback.
Good.
And yeah, so we have had some engagement like that, because you'll see a whole whack of students from school X who are responding between 10:15 and 10:30 a.m. So
Last time. Well, thanks for fleshing that out. That's very interesting.
And if no one else, I just had some questions about the, get back to the pie graph there. From the feedback. First of all, it's wonderful to have so much feedback. As you said, we don't get that much. Over 1,000 is quite impressive, but I'm just looking at these two pie charts. If you scroll up so that they're both on the picture, they're pretty much identical. And you've got, so the staff, and then the number of staff and the number of people who want policy as is the same. The parent number and people who want minor revisions before adoption are the same. And the student and the people who don't like it are the same. So can this be broken down, or can we infer from that, or am I reading it wrong, that maybe the staff responded more and we're happy to have it? The parents responded more than usual, but still less than staff and are still questioning, and the students responded less but don't like it at all. Is that fair, or is that can be
no,
broken
it's
down?
coincidental.
It's a coincidence, okay.
Coincidental. The way that we collected the data, I can drill down for specific subgroups. I don't have those numbers available to me, but I could bring them back.
Yeah,
to
no,
you.
I don't need the numbers. I just wanted to see if you had that, because
Yes.
at first glance, it is quite a coincidence. So if you're telling me that it is a coincidence and it broke down that way, then I'm perfectly satisfied. So thank you. So
This is a good lesson on data literacy.
It
right?
is.
And so the problem with this chart, the problem with these two pie charts is that we've chosen to use the same color scheme for two very distinct responses. And so it does lead to that. It can lead to that misinterpretation of the data, right? So what I would recommend is different color scheme for the answers to that second question. Because you cannot conflate these numbers, because these colors will lead you to make that mistake.
So they're virtually identical, 1% off. So that's quite a coincidence. Do you have a question? Sorry.
So to be clear, on that 22% that says make revisions to the policy.
Could be a majority.
Some of them could be teachers.
For all we know, the students have a majority view on that, right? So Assistant Superintendent Anderson hasn't broken it down for, but could have, and could if you're interested.
But as much as student feedback is important, I think staff feedback is also equal as important.
Absolutely, I'm just simply
Because
observing that we can't assume, like the colors would suggest, that the students are the ones saying, make major revisions.
Yeah, because definitely the last time we reviewed it, we talked about policing, right? So that's why I was asking a question
Yeah.
about staff support, because I think that's gonna be important as.
Absolutely. Maybe it would be helpful if you could break it down in a simple way, not perhaps too complex,
Will do.
and let us have that information.
Certainly.
So, where are we here? The policy, GBEF JICJ, use of cell phones in schools, reviewed by the policy committee, received second reading, be further reviewed in committee, brought back for a third and final reading at a future date. Need a mover and a seconder for this, please. Trustee Garrier, trustee Semignola. Discussions, I believe, unless there's any more discussions, call the question. Please have trouble. You're raising a hand there. I think we've got a unanimous. Vote has been carried. Thank you. So next we move into correspondence. Number 9, we have correspondence received. There's a list there of the correspondence that was received by the board, and a list as well by the correspondence received from MSBA by the board. And I've heard no one wishing to pull anything out for further discussion, so I believe those correspondence can be put as part of our agenda. Next, we move to action items. We have as a bylaw for religious instruction. It's the second reading. Bylaw 2025-001, religious instruction in Code Van Bellingham, second reading. Chair will provide context board motion. We have the petitions, and this is the second reading. It's the one that was pulled back for some reason. No. So the motion is bylaw 2024-2025-001 being a bylaw to authorize the instruction of religion at École Van Bellingham during the 2024-2025 school year, received second reading and brought back. This doesn't make sense. Second and third reading at a future date. Should be third reading. Yeah. You brought back to third reading at a future date. So we have a motion for this, trustee Nemeth. Trustee Semignola, second. Questions or comments on this one? All question, all those in favor? Hand up, I think we covered. The bylaw has passed. We'll now look forward to third reading. We also have an action item about rescheduling our October 15th, 2024 regular board meeting to October 22nd, 2024. This is our regular board meeting was in conflict with our choral celebration, and I know a number of trustees, myself included, and senior leadership team would like to be at that very, very important event for our community. So to accommodate that, we're proposing that our regular public board meeting be moved a week. So the motion is further to motion 2024-005, adopted at the annual board meeting of September 3rd, 2024. That's when we set our schedule for the year. Due to a scheduling conflict, the regular board meeting scheduled to take place on Tuesday, October 15th, 2024, be rescheduled to Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024, commencing at 6:30 p.m. And that the special board meeting scheduled for Tuesday, October 22nd, 2024 be canceled, and that item be included in the regular meeting agenda, rescheduled to take place on October 22nd, 2024. So, mover second, trustee Nemeth, trustee Walker second. Questions or comments on this? Yes.
It's not a question, just in case others in the public are interested. There is a procedural bylaw and a couple other policies that were listed in the roadmap as being presented for next reading on October 15th. I think it'll be good to just point that out, that those will be October 22nd.
Yes. Thank you for that. Questions or comments? We're good. We'll call the motion. All those in favor? Motion is carried. Thank you very much. I'll look forward to that wonderful celebration of the arts for our students. Now we come to the portion of our meetings called the public question period. And this is the period where verified virtual participants and verified in-person participants can bring forward questions for clarification regarding items on today's agenda. We have someone here in person. Do you have any questions or comments or clarification today?
No one, good, thanks, Chair, appreciate it.
Thank you. And anyone online? We have a few verified people online. Any hands raised? Very good. That having been said, call the meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone.
Oh, my God.
What was this?
Very, sorry, no worries.
Ask you a couple of questions.